The chime of the bell beckons us into sacred time. Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Houston. I'm Mark Vogel, music director of this vibrant and growing community. We are a congregation that welcomes you, no matter who you love and no matter how you practice spirituality, because we know we need not think alike to love alike. We are a congregation that extends a heartfelt and inclusive invitation to join us in meaningful worship and in service to the world. We welcome each of you, those here in person and those who are joining us online via our live stream. And now I invite you to join us in our opening song. This is number 131 in the gray hymnal, Love Will Guide Us, number 131. Please rise in body or in spirit.
Please be seated. Join us as we worship together. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, today you can give from deep within you. Join us to change the world with our love. Join us as we worship that which provides meaning and value to our lives, as we sing songs that nourish our souls, and as we work to create a more just, tolerant, and compassionate world. You can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Come, let us worship together.
Celebremos compartiendo nuestras vidas, encendiendo esta luz.
Sometimes things don't turn out the way you planned. It's hard to believe life just dealt you another dirty hand. It'll bring you to your knees when it feels like this whole world is caving in. Then it's time to call me up, my friend. Just call me up, my friend. Gives you more than your share of a heavy load. Keeps raining every day. But like those stories we've all been told, keep walking and you'll find your way. When it feels like this old world is caving in, then it's time to call me up, my friend. Just call me up, my friend. Call me in the dead of night. We all need some love and care. When nothing day or night feels right, when your heart is cold and bare. By the time we reach our mortal end, pain and sorrow we will share. The thing that helps our lonely hearts to mend is knowing the cross we all must bear. When it feels like the tears will never end, then it's time to call me up, my friend. Just call me up, my friend.
Please join me in the spirit that some call prayer and others name meditation. Open yourself to the wonders and mysteries of the world. Open yourself to compassion and empathy. Take one breath, then another. Center yourself. These are difficult and anxious days. The virus is resurgent amongst us. The climate is in crisis while the planet warms, nay, burns. An autocrat would arise in this country. Democracy is in retreat in others. It is easy in such times to give ourselves over to despair, to imagine that defeat is inevitable and that there is no hope on the horizon. In these times, my prayer for us is simple. May we remember that what each of us does matters. We might not be powerful. We might not number among the great and the wise. But whoever we are blessed with the human ability to dream and the human power to share our dreams, and in doing so, bring something of our dreams into being. What each of us does matters. We can bring more kindness, more hope, more love, more possibilities that the grave catastrophes of the hour can be confronted into being. That we might each do so, I invite the congregation to say, Amen. We lift up now that which sits heavy and light upon our hearts. We lift up Donna Gray, who is recuperating after a successful surgery. We lift up the Morrisons. May Brian enjoy a quick recovery. I invite you now to speak or to bring to mind the names of those you wish to be held by this community. In this great cloud of witness and memory, amid this beloved community, we hear these names and hold them in our hearts. Let us remember the suffering and joy amid and amongst our community that we do not know as well. We pause now in awe and wonder of the beauty, diversity, and mystery that is life. In our loud and busy lives, we do not pause like this often enough. And so even a brief silence can feel long-lasting. Let us be thankful for the cease in the cacophony, and in the spirit of love, in the spirit of hope, and in the spirit of compassion, invite each of you to enter into a time of silent meditation, reflection, or prayer.
Good morning. I'd like to apologize. So, offering. Each week, our morning offering is shared with an organization that shares our Unitarian Universalist values. This week, that organization is the Freedmanstown Association. Members of our community project team have been instrumental in the rebuilding of Houston's Freedmanstown, a historic post-U.S. Civil War community of African Americans. The Freedmanstown Association is a community-based nonprofit corporation. The association was formed in 1981 to design, implement, coordinate, and direct programs intended to ensure that effective participation of Fourth Ward residents in the redevelopment and revitalization of their community. Our regular Sunday morning offering collection invites us to weave a tapestry of love and action. We ask you to give generously. An offering will now be gratefully received.
To the work of this church, which is weaving a tapestry of love and action, we dedicate our lives and these our offerings.
Our first reading is from Ursula Le Guin, titled Speech in Acceptance of the National Book of Foundation Medal for Distinguished Contribution to American Letters. Hard times are coming when we'll be wanting the voices of writers who can see alternatives to how we live now, can see through our fear-stricken society and its obsessive technologies to other ways of being, and even imagine real grounds for hope. We'll need writers who can remember freedom, poets, visionaries, realists of a larger reality. Books aren't just commodities. The profit motive is often in conflict with the aims of art. We live in a capitalism. Its power seems inescapable, but then, so do the divine rights of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings. Resistance and change often begin in art, very often in our art, the art of words. The name of our beautiful reward isn't profit, its name is freedom.
Our second reading is from Ode to Solitude by Pablo Neruda. The desert is the earth's solitude, and mankind's solitude is sterile like the desert. The same hours, nights, and days wrap the whole planet in their cloak, but they leave nothing in the desert. Solitude does not accept seeds.
De Oda a la Soledad, por Pablo Neruda. Soledad de la tierra es el desierto, y estéril es como la soledad del hombre. Las mismas horas, noches y días. Toda la tierra envuelve con su manto, pero no deja nada en el desierto. La soledad no recibe semillas.
A ship on the sea isn't the only image of its beauty. It flies over the water like a dove, end product of wondrous collaborations between fires and stokers, navigators and stars, men's arms and flags in congregation, shared loves and destinies.
No es solo su belleza, el barco en el océano. Su vuelo de paloma sobre el agua es el producto de una maravillosa compañía de fuego y fogoneros, de estrellas y navegantes, de brazos y banderas congregados, de comunes amores y destinos.
In its search for self-expression, music sought out the choir's choral hardness. It was written not by a single man, but by a whole score of musical relations.
La música buscó para expresarse la firmeza coral del oratorio y escrita fue no solo por un hombre, sino por una línea de ascendientes sonoros.
And this word, which I poise here suspended on a branch, this song that yearns solely for the solitude of your lips to repeat it. The air inscribes it at my side, lives that were lived long before me. And you, who are reading my ode, you've used it against your own solitude. We've never met, and yet it's your hands that wrote these lines with mine.
Y esta palabra que aquí dejo en la rama suspendida, esta canción que busca ninguna soledad sino tu boca, para que le repites, la escribe el aire junto a mí, las vidas que antes que yo vivieron, y tú que lees mi oda contra tu soledad, la has dirigido, y así tus propias manos la escribieron sin conocerme, con las manos mías.
Here ends the second reading.
We invite you to find the gray hymnal and turn to number 212. This is We Are Dancing Sarah's Circle. This beautiful song uses the African American spiritual tune for We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder, but these new words were written in 1975, and these words do include gender-specific language that we might not have approached if it were written in today's world. But it still is a powerful song with a beautiful message. We invite you to rise in body or in spirit for hymn number 212, We Are Dancing Sarah's Circle.
Sarah's
It is good to be here in this pulpit with you this morning. Indeed, these last 2 Sundays, it's really been a delight to be back here with a congregation in the sanctuary, to mingle and to talk after the service, and to offer something of my life to a beloved congregation, not over Zoom or in a pre-recorded video message, but live and in person. We humans are social creatures. We build the world we live in together. For good and for ill, we each contribute something to the collective whole. We can choose to do harm, or we can choose to bless each other with our presence. You have gathered here, I suspect, in part because you are seeking the blessing of community. Your presence brings that blessing into being. You bless each other when we assemble. When we are together, we can push away loneliness, offer each other some comfort when hope is hard to find, and share our joys so that they spark more brightly. It should not be that surprising, then, that I have enjoyed the social aspect of our regathering. After a prolonged isolation, it is good to be together again and to be blessed by you. Now, that is not to claim that there haven't been a few awkward moments. I know I am not alone in thinking that I have some social graces to relearn. After more than a year when socializing has been something of a dangerous activity. Nonetheless, I've been finding the immediate feedback that I've been getting after our services most helpful. I do not have to wonder whether I hit this point or missed that one. Someone seems steadily willing to offer me their perspective. And on this note, I want to share something that someone offered to me last week after the second service. While I was in Channing Hall, they came up to me and let me know that they appreciated my word. But they wanted me to know they had particularly enjoyed the previous week's service. Our first week back in the sanctuary, you might recall, I structured my sermon around the phrase from the 42nd Psalm. Each time I offered the words with joyous shouts of praise, I encouraged you to let everyone know that you were glad to be here. And many of you did. That first Sunday back, we had a stronger amen corner than I think we've had at any point during the before times. The person who came to talk to me in Channing Hall wanted me to know that they especially enjoyed that aspect of the service. They did not want it to be just a one-off. Instead, they hoped joyous shouts of praise of some form would be ingrained in our culture of our congregation. Now, I will admit, I agree. I agree because when you respond to the sermon, you emphasize a simple truth about our gathering. Worship is something we're supposed to be doing together. We are right now, excuse me. We are right now engaged in the collective act of co-creation. In our service and our gathering, we are building our community and blessing each other. Can I, perhaps, to that, get an amen or a joyous shout right there? Pablo Neruda recognized our collective nature in his reflection on the nature of poetry. Writer and reader, he understood, engaged together in creating the meaning of a text. And you, who are reading my ode, you've used it against your solitude. We've never met, and yet it's your hands that wrote these lines with mine. Y tú que leas mi oda, contra tu soledad la has dirigado, y hace tus propias manos la escribieron, sin conocerme, con las manos míos. We are social creatures. Until we read them, the words on Neruda's page are just meaningless ink. It is only once you or I give them eye or throat that the letters begin to mean anything. A ship on the sea isn't the only image of its beauty. It flies over the water like a dove, end product of wondrous collaborations. This world we live in, like this service we offer, is an act of constant co-creation. I bring my part into being. Together we form, you bring your part, and together we form something of what is. I offer you these reflections on my way, as I make my way to the line of text upon which I wish to hinge today's sermon. It comes from the writer of speculative fiction, Ursula Le Guin. She used her many novels to point to a simple truth about our world. Things can be different than they are. Deeply immersed in the fields of anthropology and history, she knew another truth. Things have been different than they are now. In one of her speeches, she provided the sentence to which we now turn. We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. But then, so did the divine right of kings. Now, there's a lot happening in that sentence. It's filled with big ideas. It offers a social critique. It suggests the possibility of hope. For Le Guin, her sentence names the system that she thought was the source of, shall I call it, evil? The system that she named she understood to be behind a great deal of human suffering and the driving engine behind the climate catastrophe. Now, you may not agree with Le Guin's naming. You might also not agree with your preacher's persistent criticisms of the same economic system. I'm not going to worry about that a great deal. Instead, I will point you to our earlier hymn. We sang, "We will all do our own naming." And I'm offering Le Guin's naming to suggest something that transcends the particularity of our predicament and my own preacherly analysis. I'm offering it as a reminder that over time, we humans have created a great number of social systems. Throughout human history, these social systems have crested and fallen like so many ocean waves. However we want to name it, our social system is changing. We're at an inflection point, caught in what John Macy has hopefully named the Great Turning. We are at the threshold of radical change. As catastrophic forest fires and floods attest, the climate is continuing to warm rapidly. As the journalist David Roberts wrote recently, there's no moderate position on climate change. Either we act rapidly and at a massive scale to avoid the worst consequences, or we suffer the worst consequences. Either outcome involves radical change. There's no avoiding radicalism. The world we live in is changing. We are changing it so much that some geologists have even argued that we need to recognize we have entered into a new geological epoch, what they call the Anthropocene, the human epoch. In the Anthropocene, we humans are not only responsible for shaping our societies, we are responsible for shaping the planet itself. We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable, but then so did the divine right of kings. The rest of the sermon, I want to focus less upon the social critique Le Guin offers, her naming, and more on the second two clauses of that sentence. Its power seems inescapable, but then so did the divine right of kings. These two clauses are meant to remind us that our social systems have changed before, and so it is possible to imagine that they might change again. For hundreds of years, the divine right of kings, the idea that the monarch was specially anointed by God to rule, was an almost unchallengeable idea. In the 17th century, the English Parliament believed it so much that the body even began its sessions with the speaker uttering the platitude, "Kings were visible gods and God an invisible king." So taken for granted was the king's divinity that members of Parliament when they were rebuked by the royal personages, often responded without sarcasm. "Because the king is a god upon earth, I would answer him as we should answer God in heaven, that is, with a prayer." This idea was not universally accepted. We have pamphlets of radicals which contain proclamations like, "It is undoubtedly lawful for the people to resist the king, for the people's power is higher, yea, the supreme power." and lyrics from even more subversive ballads that attest, "The poor shall wear the crown." Over time, the ideas of radicals became commonplace. Over time, the idea of the divine right of kings started to be viewed as anachronistic, absurd. Over time, the social system, society, changed. Now, this, of course, is a great oversimplification. It excludes much blood, sweat, and tears. The divine right of kings did not go quietly into this good night, but it did go. I could stand here and tell you how and why it went. I could offer a history of that transformation, speak of the English Civil War and the French Revolution. I could tell you the story of the American and Haitian revolutions. Perhaps I might linger upon a quote by Toussaint Louverture, the Haitian revolutionary, who declared, "It could only be a king who dare claim the right to reduce into servitude men made like them, and who nature has made free." But I'll save such a discourse for another forum. Instead, I want us to lift up this point. We humans create the social systems, the economic and political systems in which we live. We have the power to imagine and bring into being different ways of being than we have now. One of the purposes of a religious community like ours is for such imaginings. Radical talk, you might think, but such a claim rests upon the bedrock of our Unitarian Universalist theological tradition. Indeed, such a claim bespeaks much of what makes our tradition what it is. Back in the 16th and 17th centuries, the congregations that became Unitarian Universalist emerged in opposition to the theological ideas that we humans have no power to shape the world in which we live. Many pulpits back then were filled with performances inspired by John Calvin. He utterly rejected the idea that we humans are free in any ways to choose our own destiny. Instead, he taught a doctrine called predestination. This is the belief that, in Calvin's words, God has determined with himself whatever he wishes to happen with regard to every man. He paired this belief with which he named the depravity of our nature. This was the claim that humans are fundamentally evil and incapable of bringing any good into the world separate from what God wills for them. Unitarian theologians like William Ellery Channing rejected Calvin's beliefs on both counts. Instead of preaching about human depravity, Channing taught that we all contain within the likeness of God. With this likeness inside, he argued, we are gifted with the possibility of nurturing the spark of the divine so that it might shine ever more brightly. Whether or not we nurtured that spark was ours to choose. It was not foreordained that I would fail to let it gleam brightly and you would let your spark dazzle and flare. What happens is tied to the choices we make. Channing's theology helped to inspire a generation of social reformers, people brave enough to believe that the world they lived in could be different than it was. They inhabited a world where slavery was the norm and where women did not have the right to vote or even speak in public. They imagined the abolition of slavery. They imagined the rights of women. And their imaginings helped bring such things into being. Again, I find myself offering oversimplifications, trying to reduce so much history, so much theology, so much bravery into a few sentences. The point I'm attempting to bring us to is this. We co-create. We bring into being the world we inhabit. We social creatures create our society. This world is not foreordained. We can build a different society than the one we presently inhabit. We can imagine a new world into being. Indeed, this is the only thing that has ever happened. All of human society, all that is, began as an idea, a twinkling, a dream. The sanctuary in which we worship started as conversations between this congregation and an architect some generations ago. The pews upon which you are seated, if you are here with me, the pulpit from which I am preaching, all ideas carved into wood. The same is true for those of you watching our service via Livestream. The silicon chips, the Camera lenses, the speakers, the audio equipment all began as ideas before materials were manufactured into their present forms. What is true of our physical human creations is true of social ones as well. Religion, this act of which we are collectively engaged today, now as a congregation, has taken many forms. We could go across the street to First Presbyterian and find it in a somewhat different form than the one we have here. We could travel back in time to ancient Egypt and encounter yet a different form, or visit a mosque, a synagogue, or a Hindu temple and encounter still others. We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable, but then so did the divine right of kings. I'm offering you these words this week as we are caught in a great turning, for the simple reason that as your minister, I'm called upon to offer you hope. Hope might be hard to find. The climate crisis is dire. The hour is late. We have only a few years to avert the worst of what might come. But hope is not unjustified. We humans have changed society before. We're no longer ruled by a monarch who believes himself to be ordained by an all-powerful deity. And so we have the possibility of changing again. Catastrophe is not foreordained. As human society, we will choose it or we will choose something different. But we will make the choice. We either decide to imagine ourselves an outcome where we avert the overwarming of the planet, or we will not. We really do have that power. Now, I'm not promising you that the radical changes that must be made to ward off the worst will be easy. I'm not even telling you that they will occur. There are grave forces in place, structures that we all participate in, which want to tilt us to the radicalism of despair, the belief that we cannot stop what is coming, and that we cannot choose differently. I'm just trying to offer you a radicalism of hope and remind you that, hard as it is to imagine, we as a human species have the power to choose our collective fate. In our closing hymn, we will sing, "We are of the Spirit, truly of the Spirit. Only can the Spirit turn the world around." Whether you identify as an atheist, a theist, a pagan, Buddhist, Christian, or just plain Unitarian Universalist, or something else, let me suggest that the words of our hymn affirm, in an indirect or metaphorical way, the message of this sermon. It is not the material forces of our world that are going to entirely determine what happens. Fire, water, and mountain are all very important. But in the end, it is the spirit, the ideas, the imaginings, the dreams that empower us to bring things into being. The world is not foreordained. And in the hopes that we will all remember that, I invite the congregation to say, Amen.
Closing song, sorry. Here we are. Before we sing our closing song, I wanted to thank Traveler, our special guest musicians, for their contributions to our service. And stick around for the postlude. They'll be offering us one more song at the end of the service. For now, we sing number 1074 in the Teal Songbook, number 1074. It's at the very back. This is Turn the World Around. Please rise in body or in spirit.
Mountain, living on
close with these words adopted from the Universalist minister John Murray. Go into the highways and the byways. Give the people something of your new vision. You may possess a small light, but uncover it. Let it shine. Use it in order to bring more light into the standing into the hearts and minds of all people. Give them not hell, but hope and courage. Preach kindness and everlasting love. Amen.
Extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Testing. I may think I want to make mounds and mounds of money to buy this and that, to have everything. I may think I want to be 21 again. Yes, to be beautiful, young and free. Truth is, I'm a little bit afraid. Truth is, I'm quite a bit lazy. Truth is that love is all we need to be happy and free. I may think I want to fly right up to the moon and ski along the dunes like a strong young boy. I may think I want to go to an octopus garden where I can feed my curiosity and joy. Truth is, I'm a little bit afraid. Truth is, I'm quite a bit lazy. Truth is, I'd miss you too bad, so I'd never buy a ticket to go. What would make me want to buy a ticket to have everything I think I want? Would you go there with me and stand in line, and all my wishes will come true? All our wishes will come true. All our wishes will come true. I may think I want peace and quiet, nothing but silence for days on end. But I know that after a while I'll be lonely and sad and want to hear your voice again. Truth is that in the end, truth is I need you, friend. Truth is that love is all we need to be happy and free. All we need to be happy and free. And all our wishes will come true. 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 Love is all we need to be free. All we need to be happy and free. All we need to be happy and free. All we need to be happy and free is love.